Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to go back to a familiar place. Those that enjoy Chinese pens and watch my channel and others are probably familiar with the brand Delike. So I had to get another one. They have a new model and I saw a review on it. I liked it. We'll show you what that translates into. It's a nice green box, different box than I've seen in other Delikes, and let's unveil the pen. And we'll see the pen and a nib. Now obviously this was in a plastic sleeve, the nib was in a little plastic envelope, but I've already taken the pen apart, cleaned it, done my usual thing just before I'm going to ink it up. You know, nice simplistic packaging. I think Wasky would like that. So the pen is Delike New Moon Gen 3 Model 3, something to do with the 3. It's metal, it's heavy. The cap unscrews. There's a nice feel to it. Looks like 1.5 turns, and we see a nice metal section. Well, relatively speaking. I've put in the medium nib, because it came with an extra fine, which I got as bent, and the medium nib. They threw in the medium nib. This pen, some people are selling for under $5 without the second nib. So I'd much prefer to spend an extra couple bucks and get another nib, especially medium, because I don't have a Delike medium nib. It posts fine, and it fits in the hand well posted. It's a little bit short unposted, as you can see. It's very heavily weighted towards this section. This section is a solid piece of metal. This unscrews, revealing what we've seen before, this converter that Delike has been using, kind of reminiscent of platinum in design. Very, very nicely done. You know, metal threads on metal. They're chrome plated. So that's the pen. We'll take a look at the bits and pieces. I got bamboo green, and it is a nice green. Then we're going to ink it up with a green ink and see how this medium Delike nib performs. Well, I've taken a pen apart a little bit. These are all metal parts. And this section has some weight to it. You can feel it. That's a solid piece of metal. And these two nib assemblies screw in. I got my extra fine bent because I enjoy that nib quite a bit. And the regular extra fine I'm not a fan of. And then they threw in this medium nib, which does a decent amount of tipping material on it, so I'm very interested to try this out. The nice converter, which Delike has been using, kind of reminiscent of platinum design, but obviously that hole in the end is much smaller than platinum uses. And it fits over this nib assembly that Delike uses. It's a very tight fit. It's a nice kind of like silicone insert there in the converter. We're going to look inside the cap next. So when I look inside with my little light, I notice there's a pretty decent sized screw there at the cap. Holds down the finial, holds down the clip assembly. And we know I've had issues with these screws rusting, leaking, maybe not being tight. So we have to test the pen out and see how it works. For the price of the pen, you know, a liner would have been nice in there, but we didn't get one. This pen has some very nice, interesting design features on it. First of all, this plating is done very well. Very shiny, very consistent. Has a good quality feel to it. You know, there's a seam there you don't really feel. Clip is stiff and functional. When you unscrew it, you can feel that there's plastic threads inside the cap, which is an interesting touch. The other thing is this step up here is just a very gradual step up which separates the threading And you can feel these threads being metal on metal. They have kind of like a rough feel to them. Not as smooth as definitely capping and uncapping, but that's something you're going to do much more often. So putting a plastic insert in there made sense, I think. There's just a slight step up here, which isn't bothersome at all. And the threads you don't really feel at all either. So those are kind of nice little features, nice little lip at the end of the section. And like I mentioned, this pen has a decent weight to it. So overall, I think they did a beautiful job in coming out with this Gen 3 model of the New Moon. So I happen to have the other models of the New Moon. This is the first one that came out, which is interesting. It's about the same size as the Gen 3. And this is the Gen 2 model they came out with, which I thought was a pretty good upgrade. They have a metal section, you know, inside there. So nicely done. They all have flat tops, flat bottoms, a nice big cap band here at the bottom of the cap. You know, a good substantial clip. So overall, the pens are nice, and the Model 3 cost a lot less than the Model 1 or the Model 2 did. One of the things that Delike has done is they all have the same nib assemblies here. And yes, there is a glass nib in the original model of the New Moon. It's a glass nib that was in my Marupu pen. I like it, and it's great for testing inks out with. So that's my new pen. I did have a nice glass pen that I got from Banggood, but as usual with glass pens in me, they don't survive much. So it fell off of my desk onto the floor and broke. Sad, but that's how it happens. You know, the Gen 2 one is, again, like I said, they used that metal insert, so it's in a little metal there at the end. So it was kind of an upgrade. You know, posted, which is interesting, is the Model 3 and the Model 2 are pretty close in length. And, you know, the Model 3 is up there too. And the other thing that's nice about those plastic threads is when you post it, you're not metal on metal, enamel or whatever that coating is. And it feels a lot nicer than it would if those threads were not plastic. Delike also changed the way they did the engraving on the band. Instead of being stamped in, it's more or less kind of laser engraved or some type of etching. And as you go around to the back side, you'll see New Moon, but you don't see anything on the Model 3. So they did make a change. Interesting change, but the cap band looks exactly the same as far as its shape and design goes. It's just that the way that they've labeled it is different. Thinking about an all-metal pen and why one would want an all-metal pen, I decided to take a look at the weight of the different components, and basically almost everything weighs twice as much in the metal pen as it does in the original Model 1, which was all acrylic. That weight distribution, I think, adds to the quality of the writing experience, or detracts depending upon your perspective. I like writing with both of these pens. I can understand why they would be good for some people. I used a Sailor legal pen, which had a weighted section, and I enjoyed that a couple years ago. So that extra weight of the metal pen may equate to value and quality in some people's minds. So you have an opportunity now to get one at a very reasonable price. So one pen to compare the New Moon Model 3 against is the Wing Sung 627, which I reviewed a month or so ago. I'll put the link up in the description. Both of these are all metal pens. Both of these have substantial weight, but considering how much bigger the 627 is, it only weighs about 4 grams more. It also has a little bit more depth to the plastic resin over it. There's a little bit of more detail to it. And the other thing I found interesting, and this is, you know, my engineer in manufacturing and design, is here both of these have a plastic liner inside the cap, but here on the 627 they put a plastic extension on the metal barrel, and on the Moon Man Model 3 they did not. Similar metal sections, and both of these sections I don't find at all detract from the writing experience. Yeah, they're a little bit more slippery than I would like, but you get used to it. The other thing that's obvious is a number 6 nib versus a number 5 nib. So it's another difference. Both of these are mediums. Both of these write extremely well. Both of these are very smooth, put down a lot of ink. So I just thought you'd like that comparison between these two pens, but considering this one could be gotten for $5 and this one is over $20, the Model 3 is definitely a better deal. So what ink to put in it? I'm going with a nice, comfortable, standard Lamy green. Got a really nice full fill. I did my 3 fills, make certain everything is flushed and saturated. So we're going to write a little bit and then show you how it writes. So now we've come to that all-important time of how does the pen write? So I think you may have gathered from some of my earlier discussions, I like the way it writes. I've had a number of medium nibs. I put on my Pen BBS, my Delikes, and I've enjoyed those medium nibs. But now you can buy them with the pen already there, so you don't have to worry about swapping or making 2 purchases or things of that nature. So like I said, this would always post, and you know, it doesn't post as securely as you probably might like, but it's secure enough. I'm not going to be doing gymnastics with it posted, so I think functionally it works good. The metal section doesn't feel cold like a lot of metal sections do, but again, it doesn't feel as nice as a resin would, at least in my perspective. And you can see that cap has already come a little bit loose. So let's put nib to paper. I think you can tell how smooth this is. I mean, it is as smooth as any nib I've ever used. It doesn't require any pressure to write. You put a lot of pressure on it, you get a little bit more ink flow, but it's not something you're going to flex, never designed for that. But I think it's very comparable to other medium Chinese nibs that I've used. You know, I can write with this for a while. As you can see, I hold it more up towards the thread, so I avoid that kind of slipperiness down here at the section. So I think that's probably the biggest drawback, but then the pen wouldn't write the same without a metal section. The balance wouldn't be the same, so maybe they could have put some type of different coating on here, but then the aesthetics would be off, and as I ramble on and try to design pens, which is not something I plan to do. So let's do a rating. I'm going to give it an 8.9, and you may have thought it was going to be higher, but the posting is certainly something that it should post better, should post most securely, so that detracts from the writing experience. And yes, you could write with it unposted, but it doesn't feel good. The balance doesn't feel right. So the nib is beautiful. The nib is as good as any nib I've ever used from that medium perspective. So let's put it in perspective. This is a Delike Alpha that I also put a medium nib in, but this is not a Delike medium nib. But it is very, very similar. Blindfolded, this one actually almost feels a little bit smoother. You know, it's basically the same type of line. This one actually looks a little wider. So I would prefer this generic nib over the Delike nib. And I've enjoyed this pen since I put this nib in it. Let's take a look at a bent nib. And right away you can see that it's a much finer line. Not as fine as the extra fine that's not bent, so you can imagine what that line is like. You know, this is smooth. It's in the same family as the smoothest of these, just not quite as much. You get a little bit more feedback, but then it's a finer point. So finer points tend to provide more feedback because of the smaller contact area. And this is Sishin Kujinak tomato. I wanted a red ink in here, and I haven't used tomato for a while. It's a little bit on the light side, but hopefully you can easily see from the width of the line how they compare. I enjoy all of these pens. I think Delike has made a nice adjustment in their models. They've come out with some that have been very, very nice. So we're coming to the end of this video. It's gotten to be a lot longer than I originally expected it to be, but then there was a lot of stuff to cover. And I do think this pen is an excellent value. I would say it's the best $5 pen that you can buy on eBay today. And I try to give you as much information, let you feel what it'd be like if you had this pen in your hand and whether you would like it or not. So as usual, I depend upon the wisdom of my viewers to take the information I give them and potentially make whatever decisions they want. And I get a lot of feedback, and I think the feedback confirms that most people enjoy the pens when they get them. My spelling is terrible. So thank you for watching. May you have many great writing experiences. Enjoy this excellent world of pens. I'm certain there's a pen out there for you, and hopefully when you get it, you'll enjoy putting ink on paper, recording your thoughts for posterity, just enjoying the feeling. And this nib feels great. So we've reached the end. May you enjoy today and every day. That's what life is all for. Nice ink, nice color, nice nib.